Hey guys, so today's video I'm going to be sharing a little trip I did to a small town called Kaikoura on the east coast of New Zealand. It's quite near a large ocean trench and it's quite well known for its marine life. It's known for whale watching and dolphins and all this type of stuff, but in this first part of the video I'm going to be visiting the seal colony on the coast here, and I'm going to be using the Super Takumar 105mm f2.8. It's a manual lens. I've had it for a few months now, so I've been using it a fair bit, but I just thought I'd share with you guys while I'm testing it out, just photographing some of the seals here. So there is a local seal colony around Kaikoura, and so there's a few seals dotted around just sunbathing on the rocks here, but most of them are asleep, so they're not too sort of dynamic in terms of the shot. They're slightly boring because they're sleeping, but they are interesting subjects. So I'm trying to use the landscape around them as well to also sort of compose it in a way that makes it a bit more interesting, just as an image. They're interesting obviously to look at, but to get an interesting image is a different thing. So the 105 is not particularly like close to the animals. You can't go too close to them. So I'm not like right, and I can't like zoom into his face or something like that. So it's more like an overall view of the seal and then the surrounding environment around him. So in this shot here I'm just trying to position myself because there's a bird on a rock in the ocean, so I'm trying to get that in the background there. So you can see the shot here. I'm really pleased with how sharp the images are coming out of this lens. I think I was on about f11 or something around there, and you can see the seal fur is like all the detail there, and even the bird and the rocks that the bird is on is quite detailed as well. Here's another photo I got of another seal. It's about midday, so a lot of them are out sunbathing on the rocks here, just coming out of the ocean. But I just want to share with you guys here how I use the environment to sort of sculpt the way the composition works in the image. So a lot of the seals are just lying there flat, getting a nice bit of sun on them, heating up I guess. So they're not particularly interesting in terms of how dynamic they are. They're not looking at the camera, they're just sort of lying there. But they are interesting subject matter. In this shot here, I'm trying to use the environment as a sort of using different layers. So this one caught my eye because you can see in the foreground you have shadow on the rock here. Then you have a layer of light where the seal actually is. Then you have a bit more shadow on the rock, and then some light rock again, and then you have the ocean, and then you have the background. So all these layers sort of add a bit more interest to the scene. So the seal is interesting, but trying to make the rocks around him also part of the image overall. So you have to think of it slightly differently, because if you're there you think, oh, that's an interesting seal, you don't see them every day type of thing. But when you're trying to compose the image, you have to think more of the composition, how that will look as a viewer takes in an image is slightly differently than how you take it in when you're actually there. This guy here, he's doing a bit of something, he's scratching himself, and so that is a little bit more interesting in terms of it shows a motion in the image. The seal's not just lying there, so I don't have to rely on the environment as much, because the actual motion of the seal makes interest in it. So you can see the image here. I did use a lower depth of field again here, so I think I might be at 2.8 or maybe 3.5, something around there. Here's another little clip of that guy scratching himself a bit. So the seals, maybe I don't really know much about seals, but it could be the time of day that they, like midday, maybe they lie around a lot. Maybe early morning is a good time to catch them, a bit more action. But it was mainly just for trying to test this lens out and with a wildlife situation. This is probably my favorite shot I got at this seal colony, because the seal is looking directly into the camera. So that was just a bit of luck there. I was just trying to get a few different shots of this scene, because it's an interesting scene, because this seal in the foreground was just sitting there on the edge of this little pool where lots of other seals are swimming around, and it's a nice compositionally, because you can see a circular sort of shape of the pool that surrounds it, and it sort of frames the shot quite nicely. And then the seal just happened to look at the camera at the right time, so sometimes you do get a bit of luck in terms of wildlife photography. So the shore itself in Kaikoura is very interesting, because the mountains are a big backdrop and a big feature of a lot of shots you would take around here. they meet the sea quite abruptly, so they're quite a big feature in the landscape. And the rocks in the foreground are quite unique sort of feature. You don't see that kind of formation as often, well, not in New Zealand anyway. And there is quite a good contrast. I don't actually show it in this shot, but you can see it in the photo here. There's a great contrast because you got these great green rolling hills, and it's quite a sharp contrast with the way the rocks are, and it meets the sea quite suddenly. So I just thought I'd go over the composition of this shot. So in terms of the composition of this shot, I was trying to go for a letter C type shot if I was trying to simplify the shape of the composition. So it's sort of like the landmass is the letter C, and the ocean here is like the gap in the letter C. So in terms of how you view the image and how you would try and guide the user's view, when you initially look at it, you're sort of drawn towards the foreground where you can see a few bits of dry grass and there's some rocks. It's quite a flat surface of rocks. So your eye kind of naturally follows the line of the rocks against the ocean here and up towards the rolling green hills. And they're quite a big contrast in terms of colour and vibrance in the image. And your eye moves across the rolling hills and the green trees you can see in the background too, towards the big mountains, and you can see a few light rays the way the sun is coming through the mountains there. So overall it's sort of an easy image to digest visually because your eye just naturally follows the sea kind of shape around the ocean, and it takes in all the features of the image. So after visiting the seal colony, we headed up to a vantage point. It's a sort of a high viewpoint on this peninsula that Kaikoura sits on. So from this viewpoint you can see both sides of the peninsula, and it's really, you get some really great views. You can see here a better view of the mountains here as well, and you can see the mountains over the other side of the peninsula. You get a lot more variance in the ranges and things. So this is more of like a location scout for later on when the sunset is happening. So this is now down by the ocean, just in the village itself, and you have some interesting little rivers features, and the way the rocks are is quite unique. It's it adds quite a lot of texture to the image. The way all those little pebbles, and you have some seagulls and quite harsh rock formations as well. And you got the great backdrop of the mountains there. So here's just a couple shots I've got down at the shore there. You've got the seagulls in the foreground and a nice leading line up to the mountains in the back. Returning to the viewpoint, this is towards sunset now. So a lot more pleasant light for landscape photography. You can't see the sunset so well in this shot with the GoPro, but you will in a second. But you can already tell in the foreground here, it's much more yellow, pleasing light, and you get some much more longer shadows, which emphasizes the layers in the scene. And towards the left there, you can just quickly see it there. There's a couple of water towers, but there's actually steps there as well to get even higher up. You can step on the water towers and get a nice viewpoint. But you can already tell that the scene is much more vibrant in this type of light. You can see the fog, sort of misty area in the background there. The way the sun's coming low over the mountains, it creates some great layering opportunities for some great shots there. And the way the sun's coming down over these trees in the foreground is a nice is a nice feature as well. First shot here, I tried to get a nice arching bay shot here, and I tried to bring up the foreground a little bit so you can see more detail in it, and bring the greens up a little bit. And if you look at the color ranges, it kind of goes, in the foreground it goes green, and towards the middle of the image it's more orange and red colors, and then up towards the sky is more blue. So you get a nice layering color going on, and it mimics the layers of the mountains that you can see on towards the right hand side there as well. This is now, the sun has just dropped down below the mountains, but as the sun is setting you do get quite a change of light from minute to minute. So you do, when the sun is quite low on the horizon there, or just below the mountain in this case, it's good to be shooting quite a lot because the light does change quite dramatically from time to time. Just the way it interacts with the landscape at this low angles, you get all kinds of different kind of shots. This shot here was just as the sun was just touching the mountains, and you can see some great sort of rays of light coming across from the left to the right hand side of the frame, and you get some nice long shadows in the foreground with the trees casting some big shadows, and they're lighting up the foreground nicely, and you can really see the layers a lot more in the way the sun's coming in at that angle. and I tried to get a more close-in view of the layers itself. So this is more of a cropped-in view of the layers, and I really like the way this one turned out. Because of the low angle of the sun, it really emphasizes the mountains here, and the distance between the mountains has a misty effect on them, and I really like the way that one turned out. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it if you can like the video. I tried to do one or two things a bit differently this week, so I'd appreciate some feedback. And if you aren't already, it'd be great if you could subscribe to the channel. Thanks.